Hello students, today we'll be studying Lost Spring, which is the second chapter of Flamingo. So let me just give you a glimpse into the chapter, a brief overview of the chapter. So this chapter focuses on the problem of child labor in India, right? The author Jung, who is also a social worker, focuses on the problem of child labor. So she discusses two episodes in this chapter. In the first episode, she highlights the uh, pathetic conditions of rag pickers in Seemapuri, which is near Delhi. And in the second episode, she discusses the plight of bangle makers in Firozabad, right? So let's start the chapter. Lost Spring. Let me just also explain you the meaning of this title. Lost Spring. Spring here refers to Basant Ritu, a season of flowers which comes after winter, and it is considered to be the best season because it ends winter and ushers in warmer time. Spring is followed by summer, right? So the word spring here is metaphor for childhood. Like spring season is the best season in all the seasons, similarly childhood is the best period in a man or a woman's life, right? So lost spring here means lost childhood. So lost childhood of those children who are forced to work menial jobs in so many industries. So let's read the chapter and find out more details, right? So before we start, let's read a little about the author. Jung. She was born in 1964 in Rourkela, which is in Odisha, and spent her childhood and adolescence in Hyderabad. She received her education in Hyderabad and in the United States of America. Her parents were both writers. So Anish Jung began her career as a writer in India. She has been an editor and columnist for major newspapers in India and abroad and has authored several books. So the following chapter is an extract from her book titled Lost Spring: Stories of Stolen Childhood. Here she analyzes the grinding poverty and traditions which condemn these children to a life of exploitation. So as I have already told you, this chapter focuses on the problem of child labor in India. So we'll be discussing two episodes, right? So here are some expressions that will appear in the story, and I will be explaining these expressions as they come. So right, looking for means searching for. Slog their daylight hours. Slog means work hard during the daytime. A roof over his head, it means having shelter to live in, having a decent home to live in, right? And perpetual state of poverty. Perpetual means continuing, never ending state of poverty. Dark hutments means slums or areas where there are shacks and shanties. People don't have nice places to live in, so people just make makeshift places to live in with everything they get their hands on, like tin, tarpaulin, etc., thatch. So impose the baggage on the child. Impose means forcibly put the bag on the child. So let's move ahead. As I have already told you, there are two sections in the chapter, two episodes. So we'll be discussing the Seemapur episode first, where the rag pickers live. Sometimes I find a rupee in the garbage, right? Students, in order to make the chapter more appealing, I will be, using PPT also, that so that the pictures in the PPT can make the idea clear, right? So now I will be reading the text using the PPT. So here you see Lost Spring by Anis Jung. Here the rag picker children, right? So they are those children whose childhood is lost, right? So here the text and the picture, right? On left hand side you will find the text of the chapter, and on right hand side a picture conveying some idea about the text. So sometimes I find a rupee in the garbage. Why do you do this? I ask Sahib, whom I encounter every morning scrounging for gold in the garbage dumps of my neighborhood. So you see, Anis Jung was living in Delhi, and while going here and there, she found some children looking for something in heaps of garbage. So since she was busy in social work also, so she liked interacting with these children. Scrounging means trying to find something valuable from the heaps of garbage. So whenever she saw those children trying to find something from the garbage heaps, she would go to them and ask them, right, why do you do this? And the boys often replied that sometimes they found rupee in the garbage, right? So just to make it clear to you, garbage collector are those children or people who collect garbage, especially plastic from garbage or other recyclable material from garbage. They collect it and then they go and sell this collected material to recycler plants owners, and they get meager wages in return for it, or meager you say a remuneration for it, or you can say monetary gain for it. So one of the boys was Sahib. You see Sahib, note down the name Sahib. So Sahib was a rag picker, right? So Sahib left his home long ago, right? Now here Anis Jung is telling us a brief history of Sahib's family. So Sahib's family left their home long ago, set amidst the green fields of Dhaka. Dhaka is the capital of Bangladesh. So these rag pickers actually hail from Bangladesh. In 1971 they had immigrated to India, right? Now what was the reason? We'll find out. His home is not even a distant memory. So there were many storms that swept away their fields and homes, his mother tells him. So you see, when Anis Jung asks him why they left Dhaka, so Sahib explains that they left Dhaka because the climatic conditions there were not good. There were many storms. So in order to live peacefully and safely, they migrated from Dhaka to India. So that is why they left, looking for gold in the big city where he now lives. So they migrated to India. They immigrated to India and they came to Delhi. So near Delhi there was a wilderness which is now known as Seemapuri. So they settled there, and now it has become quite known for the rag pickers, right? Because most of the rag pickers live there. So answering Anish Jung's question, why does he do rag picking, he answers, I have nothing else to do, he mutters, looking away. So Anish Jung then tells him uh, sorry tells him to go to school. I say glibly. Glibly here means easily, without understanding Sahib's situation, realizing immediately how hollow the advice must sound. So you see, Anish Jung advises him or asks him why he doesn't go to school. And then immediately she realizes that she asked a wrong question. Why? Because she realizes that Sahib Alam is very poor. Maybe he can't afford going to the school. So, and then Sahib Alam replies, there is no school in my neighborhood. So when they build one, I will go. He says when government builds a school in his area, then he will definitely go to the school. And then Anish Jung just lightly says, if I start a school, will you come? I ask half joking. I said lightly. Lightly means half joking. तो अनीस जंग उसको कहती है कि बेटा अगर मैं स्कूल खोलूंगी तो तुम स्कूल में पढ़ोगे? So Sahib Alam replies, yes, he says, smiling broadly. A few days later, I see him running up to me. Is your school ready? So कुछ दिनों के बाद जब अनीस जंग वहाँ से गुजर रही होती है तो साहिब आलम उसको देखता है और उसके पास भागा भागा जाता है कुछ दिनों के बाद ही और उसको पूछता है, मैडम आपका स्कूल रेडी हो गया? So it takes longer to build a school, I say embarrassed. So Anish Jung becomes embarrassed at this because Sahib Alam had asked her a question which she had no answer to, right? So because she had promised him, or she had just jokingly asked him whether he would attend the school if she opened one. So he took it seriously, right? Sahib Alam took it seriously, and when he saw her next time, he went running to her and asked if her school was ready. So, but promises like mine abound. Note down the word abound. Abound means are in plenty in every corner of his bleak world. So you see here Anish Jung is trying to bring our attention to the indifference of the government towards these people. Government though professes claims that it does a lot for the poor, but all the government does for the poor falls short of their expectation, right? So in India the problem is really very grim because there is too much of population. So government really needs a very big budget in order to alleviate or reduce the problems of the poor people. But unfortunately not all the politicians or the leaders or the bureaucrats or the government officers work honestly. They are just worried about collecting their own wealth, and they even do corruption. So because of all this, the plight of the poor remains unchanged, right? So here Anish Jung is actually alluding means referring to false promises made by people or the government or the ministers or the political leaders, right? And the promises are many, but in reality they don't do anything. So as a result, the world of the poor remains bleak. Bleak means dull, full of darkness. So after months of knowing him, I asked him his name. So you see, Anish Jung knows Sahib now quite intimately. So he becomes quite frank with her. So on her next meeting, she asks him his name. So he says his name is Sahib Alam. He announces. He does not know what it means. So you see, beta, Sahib Alam's meaning is Lord of the Universe. If he knew its meaning, Lord of the Universe, he would have a hard time believing it. So you see there is an irony in his name. His name is Sahib Alam. So here in the picture you see a representation of Sahib. This is not the actual picture of Sahib, just a representation. So you see his name means Lord of the Universe, but in reality he is very poor. He doesn't even have shoes to wear, proper clothes to wear, right? He doesn't have a proper home to live in. He maybe doesn't get 2 square meals a day. So you see, unaware of what his name represents, he roams the streets with his friends, an army of barefoot boys who appear like the morning birds and disappear at noon. So you see, he doesn't know the meaning of his name. Similarly, like him, there are many other boys, and they come together early in the morning to collect garbage from garbage heaps, and by the time it is afternoon, they go away, they disappear, right? So over the months I have come to recognize each of them. So you see, Anish Jung has come to know many of them, uh, uh, because she has been interacting with them for quite some time. So she knows many of them. So why aren't you wearing chappals? I ask one. So another time she meets these rag picker boys. She asks one of them, not Sahib, but any other boy. She asked them कि why aren't you wearing chappals? Because most of the time they are bare feet. Bare feet means उनके पाँव में कुछ नहीं होता, चप्पल भी नहीं होती. So my mother did not bring them down from the shelf. He answered simply. वो झूठा बहाना बनाता है कि मम्मी ने मेरे को पहनने के लिए चप्पल ही नहीं दी. रियलिटी ये है कि उसके पास चप्पल है ही नहीं पहनने के लिए. Even if she did, he will throw them off. So adds another who is wearing shoes that do not match. दूसरा लड़का जो है वो कहता है कि आंटी अगर इसकी मम्मी इसको चप्पल देगी भी तो ये पहनेगा नहीं, राइट? और वो लड़का जिसने ये बोला, उसने खुद ऐसे शूज डाले हुए हैं जो आपस में मैच नहीं करते. मतलब एक शू किसी और रंग का है, दूसरा किसी और रंग का. सो व्हेन आई कमेंट ऑन इट ही शफल्स हिज फीट एंड सेज नथिंग. तो अनीश जंग कहती है कि बेटा आपने क्यों ये शूज 2 रंग के डाले हुए हैं? तो वो बेचारा थोड़ा अशेम्ड फील करता है, एम्बैरेस फील करता है, कुछ जवाब नहीं देता. आई वॉन्ट शूज सेज द थर्ड बॉय. और तीसरा एक लड़का है उन्हीं में से, उसके पास वो भी उसने पैरों में कुछ नहीं पहना हुआ. वो कहता है आंटी आई ऑल्सो वॉन्ट टू वेयर शूज, राइट? सो द थर्ड बॉय जिसने कभी शूज पहने नहीं. सो traveling across the country I have seen children walking barefoot in cities on village roads. It is not lack of money but a tradition to stay barefoot is one explanation. So here Anish Jung says she has traveled throughout India from one place to another, almost the entire of India from J and K to Kanyakumari, and she has seen that in India it is a kind of habit to remain bare feet, कि लोगों को आदत नहीं है पाँव में चप्पल डालने की. She is actually talking about maybe the time of 1980s. In modern times most of children wear slippers, shoes, etc. But at that time India was not such an advanced country or such a rich country. Most of the people living in 80s, they were poor, so they could not afford wearing chappals or shoes. So maybe this compelled them to remain barefoot and walk here and there barefoot. So I wonder if this is only an excuse to explain away a perpetual state of poverty. So I have already told you कि this is just an excuse that people don't wear slippers and chappals because they don't have money, but they hide this truth by saying that they don't feel comfortable wearing chappals, or they remain barefoot, and the real reason behind this is poverty, not the habit of putting on shoes or chappals. हिंदी में भी बता देता हूँ कि जब अनीस जंग ने इंडिया में एक जगह से दूसरी गई, ट्रैवल किया, उसने देखा कि ज़्यादातर लोग पाँव में चप्पल नहीं डालते, राइट। और वो इसके पीछे वो रीज़न जो बताते हैं वो ये है कि हमारा ट्रेडिशन ही ऐसा है, मतलब चप्पल और शूज़ ना पहनना एक किस्म का रिवाज है, पर्टिकुलरली गाँव में। तो ये एक्सप्लेनेशन दी जाती है, लेकिन अनीस जंग मानती है कि ये एक्सप्लेनेशन गलत है। जो रियल रीज़न है वो ये है कि लोगों के पास पैसे ही नहीं है चप्पल और शूज़ खरीदने के लिए, क्योंकि पॉवर्टी बहुत है इंडिया में। ये अपने टाइम की वो बात कर रही है, 1980s की बात कर रहा हूँ मैं ये। अब के टाइम पे ऐसा नहीं है, अब के टाइम पे तो सब बच्चों के पास अच्छे अच्छे शूज़ हैं, गरीबों को छोड़कर। एंड पॉवर्टी जो है उसकी कंडीशन भी अब इतनी बुरी नहीं है लोगों की। सो आई रिमेंबर ए स्टोरी ऑफ अ मैन फ्रॉम उडुपी once told me, as a young boy he would go to school past an old temple where his father was a priest। तो यहाँ पे हम वो चप्पल से रिलेटेड, शूज़ के रिलेटेड, इंडिया के ट्रेडिशन के रिलेटेड वो एक कहानी सुना रही है कि उसे एक स्टोरी याद है एक आदमी के बारे में जो कि उडुपी से था। उसने बताई थी अनीस जंग को, क्या बताई थी? एज ए यंग बॉय ही वुड गो टू स्कूल पास्ट एन ओल्ड टेम्पल, कि जब वो आदमी छोटा बच्चा था वो एक मंदिर के पास से गुजरता था, राइट, वेयर हिज फादर वॉज ए प्रीस्ट, जहाँ पे उसके पापा पुजारी थे। ही वुड स्टॉप ब्रीफली एट द टेम्पल एंड प्रे फॉर ए पेयर ऑफ शूज, और वो लड़का नंगे पाँव जाता था, उसके पास चप्पल नहीं थी, और वो स्कूल जाते जाते हमेशा परमात्मा को प्रेयर करता था कि ये परमात्मा मुझे शूज़ दे दो। तो 30 years later I visited his town and the temple which was now drowned in an air of desolation। so 30 साल बाद जब मैं उसके शहर में गई जहाँ पे वो टेम्पल था, जहाँ से वो गुजरा करता था, वो शहर अब नॉट शहर, टेम्पल अब वीरान हो चुका था, क्योंकि वहाँ कोई नहीं जाता था और काइंड ऑफ खंडहर बन चुका था। सो इन द बैकयार्ड वेयर लिव्ड द न्यू प्रीस्ट, देयर वर रेड एंड वाइट प्लास्टिक चेयर्स। तो वो उस टेम्पल के अंदर गई, वहाँ पे टूटे से मंदिर में एक पुराने मंदिर में एक नया पुजारी आ गया था, और वहाँ पे प्लास्टिक की रेड एंड वाइट चेयर्स भी पड़ी थी, लाल और वाइट कलर की, लाल और सफ़ेद कलर की। सो अ यंग बॉय ड्रेस्ड इन ए ग्रे यूनिफॉर्म वेयरिंग सॉक्स एंड शूज़। तो तभी उस यंग प्रीस्ट का में भी लड़का, जिसने की स्कूल यूनिफॉर्म डाली हुई थी और शूज़ भी डाले हुए थे, सॉक्स भी डाली हुई थी, अराइव्ड पैंटिंग एंड थ्रू हिज स्कूल बैग ऑन ए फोल्डिंग बेड। यस, वो स्कूल से वापस आया था, वापस आके उसने जल्दी जल्दी अपना स्कूल बैग उठा के मंजे पे रख दिया था, बेड पे रख दिया था। सो लुकिंग एट द बॉय आई रिमेंबर्ड द प्रेयर अनदर बॉय हैड मेड टू द गॉडेस व्हेन ही हैड फाइनली गॉट ए पेयर ऑफ शूज। सो उस लड़के को देख के कि उसने शूज डाले हुए हैं, उसको उस आदमी की याद आ गई जिसने 30 साल पहले जब वो बच्चा था प्रेयर की थी गॉड को कि मुझे शूज दे दो। अच्छा, वो प्रेयर उसकी 30 साल के बाद कंप्लीट हुई थी, राइट। सो लेट मी नेवर लूज देम, राइट। सो द गॉडेस हैड ग्रांटेड हिज प्रेयर। तो परमात्मा ने उसकी प्रेयर सुन ली थी, देवी ने उसकी प्रेयर सुन ली थी, और अब सब बच्चों के पास शूज थे। सो यंग बॉयज लाइक द सन ऑफ द प्रीस्ट नाउ वोर शूज। सो नाउ मैंने आपको पहले ही बता दिया कि मॉडर्न टाइम में सारे शूज पहनते हैं। वो जो शूज ना पहनने की या चप्पल ना पहनने की बात थी वो काफी पुरानी थी। बट मैनी अदर्स लाइक द रैग पिकर्स इन माई नेबरहुड रिमेन शूलेस। बट देयर इज ए प्रॉब्लम। क्या? There are still poor people like Sahib Alam in India who don't have any chappal or any shoes to wear। So इस सेक्शन में ये बताया अनीस जंग ने कि इंडिया की जो हालात है, फाइनेंशियल इकोनॉमिक प्रॉस्पेरिटी तो हुई है, वो लोग जो गरीब हैं, जिनके पास पैसे नहीं थे पहले 30 साल पहले चप्पल और शूज पहनने के, वो लोग ऐसे बड़े कम हो गए हैं। लेकिन उसके बावजूद बड़े बच्चे हैं या लोग हैं साहिब आलम जैसे, जिनके पास अभी भी पहनने को शूज नहीं है। मतलब पॉवर्टी स्टिल कंटिन्यूज इन इंडिया। सो माय acquaintance with the barefoot ragpickers leads me to Seemapuri, right? Now, since Anis Jung has become quite known to these rag pickers, so she, you see, goes to their colony known as Seemapuri. So, Seemapuri is a place on the periphery of Delhi, yet miles away from it. Uh, Here it's a beautiful expression. Seemapuri is quite, you see, physically close to Delhi, but metaphorically quite away from it. So you see, uh, periphery means the boundary. It is situated at the boundary of Delhi, but it is quite away, right? So here it is kind of oxymoron, right? Means two opposite things existing together. So here you see miles away from it metaphorically. इसका मतलब ये है कि सीमापुरी चाहे दिल्ली के इतनी पास है, लेकिन फिर भी वो दिल्ली से बहुत दूर है, क्योंकि दिल्ली की कंडीशन अलग है और सीमापुरी की कंडीशन अलग है. दिल्ली में सब कुछ है, लेकिन सीमापुरी में कुछ भी नहीं है. So this is what it means. So those who live here are squatters. Note down the word squatters. Squatters means people who don't have a permanent place to live in. So they temporarily live in a place and then move to another place. So squatters here means people who don't have the legal right to live here because of their poverty. So they are living in Seemapuri without legal rights. Legal rights means the land they are living on is not their own land. Who came from Bangladesh back in 1971, because these people came from Bangladesh in 1971. So Sahib's family is among them. So Sahib's family is one of the many families that migrated to India or immigrated to India in 1971. There were maybe thousands of other families from Bangladesh that came to Delhi and settled here. So Seemapuri was then a wilderness. Means at that time Seemapuri was a wilderness. Wilderness means बंजर जमीन, जहाँ पे कुछ भी नहीं था, सिर्फ मैदान था और घास फूस लगा हुआ था. There was no colony, there was no home, there was no building, there was so finding the place empty. So those families that came from Bangladesh, they settled here. Now it still is. So Seemapuri still is a wilderness, but it is no longer empty. So the condition of Seemapuri is as bad as it was at that time, but at that time it was empty. Now it is full of people. So in structures of mud with roofs of tin and tarpaulin, devoid of sewage, drainage or running water, live 10,000 rag pickers. So you see, people have made their makeshift houses, structures to live in of mud, tin, tarpaulin, and वहाँ पे कोई भी, devoid means having no sewage, sewage means sewerage, drainage or running water, and approximately 10,000 rag pickers live there in such houses. So they have lived here for more than 30 years. So this chapter was written in, I think, 2001. So you see, they came in 1971, and Anis Jung is talking about 30 years. So 30 plus, you add 30 to 1971 and it becomes 2001. So this chapter was written approximately 20 years ago, right? So 30 years without an identity, without permits, but with ration cards that get their names on voters list and enable them to buy grain. So you see, these people have lived here for 30 years without any facility, civic amenity, right? But these people, you see, somehow they have ration cards. Why? Because having ration cards means they are on the voter list. So that you see, the political leaders played a kind of game here. So they did not actually do anything for them, but just for getting their votes, they gave them ration cards, and just for providing them rations at government rates, which is very cheap, they kind of you see force them to vote for them. So you see, they gave them ration cards, and in return they demanded them to vote for them. So you see, this is what has happened to these people. So food is more important for survival than an identity. So this is what they say, that food is more important for survival than an identity. If at the end of the day we can feed our families and go to bed without an aching stomach, we would rather live here than in the fields that gave us no grain. So Jung asked one of the rag pickers families this question ki why did they leave their beautiful country, which was in, sorry, not country, their city where they lived in, which was in Bangladesh. So this is what they replied ki look, our life was in danger, we didn't get enough food there, at times we went to bed empty stomach, with aching stomach. So that's why they left that country, though it was beautiful. Say a group of women in tattered saris. So this tattered means torn saris, half torn and patched saris. When I asked them why they left their beautiful land of green fields and rivers, so wherever they find food, they pitch their tents that become transit homes. I have already told you these are squatters, nomadic type of people having no land of their own, just moving from one place to another, right, and pitching up their tent and living there temporarily and then moving further to new places. So children grow up in them, becoming partners in our survival, and survival in Seemapuri means rag picking. So when they beget children, their children also have to adopt or inherit their proper poverty, and they live like them. So right, and they also learn to survive like their poor parents, and survival for them is rag picking, means रैग पिकिंग करके प्लास्टिक ढूंढ के या रिसाइकलेबल मटेरियल ढूंढ के उसको कलेक्ट करके बेच के पैसे कमा के जिंदगी को जीते हैं वो. थ्रू द इयर्स इट हैज अक्वायर्ड द प्रोपोर्शंस ऑफ फाइन आर्ट. अच्छा, वो इतने सालों से गार्बेज उठा रहे हैं तो ये उनके लिए कला बन गई है. गार्बेज टू देम इज गोल्ड, और गार्बेज उनके लिए एक जैसे कि सोना है. इट इज देयर डेली ब्रेड. क्यों सोना है? क्योंकि गार्बेज को कलेक्ट करके वो बेचते हैं, उससे पैसे कमाते हैं और उसी से वो खाना खाते हैं, इसलिए वो उनके लिए सोना है. उसी की वजह से उनके सिर के ऊपर छत है, ए रूफ ओवर देयर हेड्स, इवन इफ इट इज लीकिंग रूफ. चाहे वो रूफ टिन की है, वो लीक करती है बरसातों में, बट फॉर ए चाइल्ड इट इज इवन मोर. लेकिन बच्चों के लिए रैग पिकिंग ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है. क्यों? लेट्स फाइंड आउट. I sometimes find a rupee, even a 10 rupee note, साहिब says, his eyes lighting up. तो साहिब से वो पूछती कि बेटा ये तुम्हारे लिए इतना जो रैग पिकिंग है इतनी इंपॉर्टेंट क्यों है? तो साहिब कहता है मैडम कभी कभी रैग पिकिंग करते मुझे पैसे भी मिल जाते हैं, कई बार तो 10 रुपए का नोट भी मिल जाता है. तो ये बात करते करते उसकी आंखों में खुशी आ जाती है, वो खुश हो जाता है. So when you can find a silver coin in a heap of garbage, you don't stop scrounging, for there is a hope of finding more. तो कहता क्योंकि जब हमें एक बार 10 रुपए का नोट मिलता है तो हम आस करते हैं कि हमें और भी मिलेगा. तो इस आशा में हम उसको और ढूंढते रहते हैं उसमें से प्लास्टिक, ताकि प्लास्टिक तो मिलेगा ही, साथ में रुपीज भी मिल जाते हैं. सो इट सीम्स दैट फॉर चिल्ड्रन गार्बेज हैज ए मीनिंग डिफरेंट फ्रॉम व्हाट इट मीन्स टू देयर पेरेंट्स. तो अनीस जंग कहती है ऐसा लगता है कि गार्बेज पिकिंग चिल्ड्रन के लिए डिफरेंट है उनके पेरेंट्स से. उनके पेरेंट्स इतने एक्साइटेड नहीं है, बट चिल्ड्रन जब वो रैग पिकिंग के लिए जाते हैं वो ज्यादा एक्साइटेड हो जाते हैं. फॉर द एल्डर्स इट इज अ मीन्स ऑफ सर्वाइवल, राइट. सॉरी, फॉर द चिल्ड्रन इट इज रैप्ड इन वंडर. चिल्ड्रन इसको खुशी खुशी करते हैं क्योंकि उन्हें 10 रुपए का नोट मिल जाता है और वो खुशी खुशी उसको और ढूंढते हैं, उसको और अपनी सोटी से, अपनी स्टिक से इधर उधर करते हैं. लेकिन बड़ों के लिए जो रैग पिकिंग है वो एक बोरिंग बिजनेस है. वो उसको करना तो नहीं चाहते, लेकिन अपने जीने के लिए उनको करना पड़ता है. सो वन विंटर मॉर्निंग आई सी साहिब स्टैंडिंग बाय द फेंस्ड गेट ऑफ द नेबरहुड क्लब. सो हियर यू कैन सी, you see near Seemapuri colony. I have already told you it is quite near to Delhi. So Delhi में कुछ क्या काफ़ी प्लेइंग क्लब्स हैं जहाँ पे अमीर लोगों के बच्चे जाके गेम्स खेलते हैं, स्पोर्ट्स खेलते हैं, जैसे कि टेनिस। तो ऐसे ही एक क्लब के पास साहिब आलम बाहर खड़ा होके बच्चों को खेलते हुए देख रहा था। तो अनीस जंग भी वहां से गुजर रही थी। उसने साहिब को देखा कि वो क्लब में खेलते हुए बच्चों को देख रहा है। So see, one winter morning I see Sahib standing by the fenced gate of the neighborhood club watching two young men dressed in white playing tennis. तो वो वहाँ रुक जाती है, उससे पूछती है कि साहिब why are you standing here? Sahib says I like the game. He hums, content to watch it standing behind the fence. Content means वो सिर्फ उसको देख के ही खुश है. You see, I go inside when no one is around. He admits the gatekeeper lets me use the swing. कहता कभी मैं भी इस क्लब के अंदर जाता हूँ, जो गेट कीपर है वो मेरे ऊपर तरस खा के मेरे को अंदर आने देता है, और फिर मैं क्या करता हूँ, मैं स्विंग्स लेता हूँ। स्विंग में वो जहाँ पे वो जो राइड्स लगी हैं उनको एंजॉय करता हूँ, राइट। सो साहिब टू इज वेयरिंग टेनिस शूज दैट लुक स्ट्रेंज ओवर हिज डिस्कलर्ड शर्ट एंड शॉर्ट्स। तो उस दिन साहिब ने भी शूज डाले हुए हैं, और वो जो शूज हैं वो थोड़े मतलब अजीब से है, और वो मैच नहीं करते जिस शर्ट जो उसने शर्ट पहनी है उसके साथ। Someone gave them to me. तो अनीस जंग पूछती है कि साहिब where did you get these shoes from? उसने कहा someone gave them to me. He says in a manner of an explanation, the fact that they are discarded shoes of some rich boy who perhaps refused to wear them because of a hole in one of them does not bother him. तो वो बताता है कि उसको किसी ने दिए। तो अनीस जंग सोचती है कि देखो, इस लड़के ने किसी अमीर आदमी के फेंके हुए जूते डाल लिए, क्योंकि अमीर लड़के ने ये शूज इसलिए नहीं पहने क्योंकि उनमें थोड़ा बहुत कोई होल हो गया होगा, तो वो उसने फेंकने थे, तो वो फेंकने की बजाय वो साहिब को दे दिया, और साहिब को इस बात से कुछ लेना देना नहीं है कि ये किसी के फेंके हुए शूज है जो उसने पहने हुए हैं। फॉर वन हु हैज वॉक्ड बेयरफुट इवन शूज विद ए होल इन ए इज ए ड्रीम कम ट्रू। वो लड़का जिसको कभी शूज ही नहीं मिले पहनने के लिए, अगर उसको फेंके हुए शूज भी मिल जाएं, उसके लिए तो ये उसका सपना ही पूरे होने जैसा है। बट द गेम ही इज वॉचिंग सो इंटेंटली इज आउट ऑफ रीच। ओके, हो सकता है अब उसको शूज तो मिल गए, लेकिन जो गेम साहिब आलम देख रहा है टेनिस की, वो कभी नहीं खेल सकता, क्योंकि साहिब डजंट हैव द मनी to buy racket and to pay the fee of a club where tennis is played. So that dream will remain a dream for Sahib. So after many days, Anis Jung again met Sahib. This morning Sahib is on his way to the milk booth, and that morning Anis Jung saw that Sahib Alam was going to milk booth. In his hand is a steel canister. Means he was holding a big steel kettle in his hand, and Anis Jung asked him, Sahib Alam, whose canister are you holding? Where are you going? So Sahib replies, I now work in a tea stall down the road. So he gives Anis Jung a surprising news that he had stopped working as a ragpicker, and instead he had been employed by a tea stall owner. So he worked as a servant at a tea stall, and he says, pointing in the distance, he you see points towards the place where the tea stall is. I am paid 800 rupees and all my meals. तो बदले में मेरे को दुकान पे काम करने के 800 रुपए भी मिलते हैं और 3 टाइम का खाना मिलता है। सो ये सुन के अनीस जंग थोड़ी दुखी हो जाती है, क्योंकि दिस मीन्स कि साहिब हैज लॉस्ट हिज फ्रीडम। यू कैन सी हियर, दिस इज नॉट द एग्जैक्ट पिक्चर, अ बॉय वर्किंग एट ए टी स्टॉल। यू सी such a young boy who should be playing, or who should be studying at school, who should be enjoying his childhood, is forced to work at a tea stall, and it is just because of the grinding poverty which continued in India and which still continues in some backward areas in India. So you see, सो अनीस जंग वरीड हो जाती है, चिंता हो जाती है अनीस जंग को. डज ही लाइक द जॉब, आई आस्क. तो अनीस जंग उसको पूछती है कि बेटा अब आप खुश हो. सो वो बेचारा कोई जवाब नहीं देता. हिज फेस आई सी हैज लॉस्ट द केयर फ्री लुक. और उसके चेहरे पे चिंता है, उसके चेहरे पे बर्डन है साहिब के. क्यों? क्योंकि सुबह से लेकर शाम तक उसको काम करना पड़ता है. द स्टील कैनिस्टर सीम्स हैवियर देन द प्लास्टिक बैग ही वुड कैरी सो लाइटली ओवर हिज शोल्डर. सो अनीस जंग सोचती है कि उसका जो रैग पिकिंग वाला बैग था वो हल्का था. इसमें भी मेटाफर है, मेरी उसमें कम बर्डन था क्योंकि वो अपनी मर्जी से सुबह जा सकता था, कहीं भी जा सकता था और मर्जी से घर आ सकता था. लेकिन यहाँ टी स्टॉल पे उसको सुबह जल्दी आना पड़ता है और शाम तक काम करना पड़ता है. द बैग वॉज हिज, एक्चुअली में बैग उसका अपना था. द कैनिस्टर बिलोंग्स टू द मैन हु ओन्स द टी शॉप. और यहाँ पे तो वो गुलामी कर रहा है टी स्टॉल ओनर की. साहिब इज नो लॉन्गर हिज ओन मास्टर. एंड अनीस जंग concludes that by joining this tea stall, by working at the tea stall, Sahib-e-Alam has lost his freedom and happiness. So that's it, beta. The first episode or the first section of the chapter is over. In the next part, we will be studying the second part, which focuses on bangle-makers of Firozabad. Thank you.